What's up, everybody? In this video, I am gonna rank the first 7 Five Nights at Freddy's games. I have not played the games after Custom Night, so I am not going to rank those games. This is mainly my personal opinion, but I will talk about each game and why they are all good games in my opinion. Even Five Nights at Freddy's 3, which everyone hates for some reason. Before we go on with the ranking, I want to remind all of you to subscribe, if you haven't already, if you enjoy this type of content. I am planning to make some more Five Nights at Freddy's videos for a while, so if this is something you enjoy, please consider subscribing. With that being said, let's get into it. The worst game is unfortunately Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night is less about story and more about mastery. By allowing players to customize animatronic behavior, it turns the entire series into a skill-based challenge that rewards deep understanding of mechanics. The game is good because it's transparent, failure is clearly tied to player decisions, and success feels deserved. It serves as both a celebration of the franchise and a test of endurance. At the same time, Ultimate Custom Night acts as a thematic epilogue. Voice lines and returning characters blur the line between gameplay challenge and narrative reflection, suggesting punishment, persistence, and unresolved guilt. The game doesn't push the story forward, but instead loops it inward, reinforcing the idea that consequences linger. Its value lies in how it reframes the series as a complete system, where fear, strategy, and story all collide. The next game on my list is Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 takes a different approach by narrowing the threat to a single animatronic, Springtrap, and shifting difficulty towards systems management. The horror here is more psychological than frantic. The player is constantly monitoring audio, cameras, and ventilation, knowing that failure doesn't come from sudden jumps but from slow neglect. This change is effective because it creates sustained dread, where tension builds gradually as systems fail and hallucinations distort perception. The setting, a horror attraction built from the franchise's own history, is a clever meta-commentary that reinforces unease. What makes Five Nights at Freddy's 3 especially good is how it frames its story around consequences. The burn-down ending and the hidden minigames suggest closure and guilt rather than shock. Springtrap isn't just scary because of gameplay, but because of what he represents, a fusion of human wrongdoing and mechanical decay. The game trusts the player to connect these ideas, which gives its horror lasting impact even though the moment-to-moment gameplay is slower and more methodical. Now the next game, I have gone back and forward because one is more scary, but the other has better story and both have a DLC. People are probably going to disagree, but next is Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 shifts the setting to a child's bedroom, transforming familiar mechanics into something more intimate and unsettling. Instead of cameras, the player relies on sound and close observation, which demands patience and focus. This is effective because it removes the sense of distance present in earlier games. The threat is always right at the door or already in the room. The game plays on childhood fears, dark hallways, silence, imagination, making the horror feel personal rather than industrial. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is deliberately fragmented, but that ambiguity is part of why it works. The crying child, the bullies, and the hospital imagery suggest trauma without fully defining it, allowing players to interpret events through symbolism. Rather than expanding the lore outward, the game turns inward, focusing on fear, memory, and perception. Its strength lies in how it uses simplicity and restraint to make the player feel small and powerless, echoing the emotional state of its protagonist. After that, for me, is Sister Location. I feel the story is better. The gameplay is very different, but the DLC is very cool, and the final cutscene is iconic. Sister Location stands out because it evolves the formula into something more narrative-driven and cinematic. The gameplay is varied, with different mechanics each night, which keeps the experience fresh while still maintaining tension. Voice acting and guided objectives give the game a more direct story, making the animatronics feel like characters rather than silent threats. This approach works because it trades some mystery for emotional engagement, drawing players deeper into the world. Thematically, Sister Location explores control, deception, and identity. The animatronics are more aware, and the player is manipulated rather than simply hunted. This creates a different kind of horror, one rooted in mistrust and inevitability. The game's ending choices and revelations reward attentive players and push the series toward a more cohesive narrative, proving that Five Nights at Freddy's can evolve without losing its unsettling atmosphere. Now for the top 3. Number 3 is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. It appears lighthearted at first, but that contrast is exactly why it's effective. The tycoon-style management sections lull the player into a sense of safety, which makes the night segments more tense when danger quietly slips in. The idea that the player might unknowingly invite threats creates anxiety before gameplay even begins. This blend of genres shows confidence in the series' identity, using familiarity to hide risk. What makes Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator especially good is its sense of finality. The game ties together long-running story threads and delivers a conclusion focused on responsibility and closure rather than shock. The ending emphasizes sacrifice and resolution, giving weight to the entire series. It succeeds because it respects the player's investment, offering an ending that feels earned while still remaining true to the franchise's dark tone. Number 2 on my list is the first Five Nights at Freddy's. Is effective because of how deliberately limited and controlled the entire experience is, turning simplicity into tension rather than boredom. The player is confined to a single security office with almost no physical agency, which creates a strong sense of vulnerability. You cannot run, fight, or hide in the traditional sense. You can only observe, manage power, and make decisions based on incomplete information. This restriction forces the player to rely on anticipation and pattern recognition, making every choice feel consequential. The static camera system, grainy visuals, and delayed feedback all contribute to uncertainty, which is one of the core elements of fear. Because danger is rarely visible directly and often implied through sound cues or camera changes, the player's imagination fills in the gaps, which is far more unsettling than constant action. The game's mechanics are tightly intertwined with its horror. Power management is not just a resource system but a psychological pressure tool. Every action, checking cameras, closing doors, turning on lights, consumes power, meaning safety actively brings you closer to failure. Each animatronic behaves differently, forcing the player to learn their patterns over time, but the game never fully explains these behaviors, maintaining mystery and tension. Because mistakes usually result in sudden failure, the player becomes hyper-aware of small details, such as audio cues or brief visual changes, reinforcing immersion. For the best Five Nights at Freddy's game on my list is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 expands on the original by taking its core tension and multiplying it through systems overload. Instead of doors, the player relies on limited tools, the Freddy mask, flashlight, and music box, creating a constant sense of vulnerability. The game is good because it forces rapid decision-making under pressure. Threats come from multiple directions, and every action has a cost in time and attention. This design turns panic into gameplay, where mistakes feel earned rather than random. The prequel setting also adds intrigue, recontextualizing familiar characters as more aggressive and unpredictable, which keeps returning players uneasy despite their prior experience. Narratively, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 deepens the series' appeal by embracing mystery rather than clarity. Minigames and visual clues hint at past events without spelling them out, encouraging player interpretation and community discussion. The animatronics feel less like obstacles and more like remnants of something broken, which adds emotional weight without explicit exposition. The game's success comes from how it balances mechanical chaos with narrative restraint, making the player feel trapped not just in a building, but in an unresolved past. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It would help me out a ton, and comment your opinions on these games. Thanks for watching.